The current scenario in ART training across the world is of observation only, which although gives you a fair idea of how the procedure is being done, but does not give you the confidence of performing it independently.
I just finished a visit to Indira IVF Group in Udaipur, India, and I'm totally impressed by several things. But one of the things that I'm most impressed of is the way they just prepare themselves for the future and how they're expanding.
I'm here this afternoon visiting the Indira IVF Center in Udaipur. It has one of the most cutting-edge facilities that I have seen, including the perfect training for physicians and for embryologists. And I really think this is the future of how to train superb doctors and superb embryologists.
Embryology is confined not only to collection of gametes or making embryos, but it is about making euploid embryos to achieve a higher pregnancy rates. Embryology skills, lab culture conditions, gamete handling, and optimal environment are desired and necessary to achieve such results.
Hi, I welcome you, Naval, my co-host and the partner, and who is the speaker today. Yes, Naval, can you switch on the camera and unmute yourself?
Yes, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, now you are visible. Yes, there, definitely.
Yeah.
Rachel, yes, can you please switch on your camera?
Yes, my camera is on. Can you see me?
On.
Yes, we can see you.
Right. So again, welcome you, Rachel, to yet another session of Indra Fertility Academy, and it's our initiative to have our international speakers, eminent international speakers, every third Friday, and have discussed one topic on embryology or clinical aspect. And so this time we are going to discuss on cryopreservation, since I think this was a much needed topic and we have long been waiting for a talk on this topic. Since the most of the FET results, they depend on the how robust your cryopreservation is and how robust your thawing procedure. Basically, it is the thawing procedure which is very important. Yes, anything from your Naval?
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I would definitely like to welcome again Rachel today. Welcome everyone to the webinar on principles of cryopreservation. As you rightly said, sir, cryopreservation is a critical technique in IVF. It allows us to store sperm, oocyte, embryos, and also tissues. This says tissue cryopreservation is also actually on a big role. And it is basically essential for successful IVF treatments. And as an embryologist, understanding the principles behind this technique is very crucial to improvise the success rates and the patient outcome. And it's good to have Rachel today. So our speaker today is expert in this field, and I think her valuable insights on the advancements and the cryopreservation techniques will help a lot of embryologists to understand this technique better into the details. So I would love to introduce her. Uh, she is actually she has over 19 years of experience, and she has obtained her master's in clinical embryology at National University of Singapore in 2001 under the guidance and supervision of NUH team that produced Asia's first IVF baby and world's first micro injection, that is sub-zona injection of sperm baby. So Rachel has working experience as an IVF consultant also in many IVF countries in Asia, such as Sri Lanka, Philippines, China. In China, I think she was the IVF laboratory laboratory director of a China-based IVF group that owns an IVF center in various cities in mainland China and Macau. And these centers perform, I think, were performing more than 3,000 IVF, that to fresh IVF cycles per annum. She has also designed and supervised the completion of the first IVF center in the southern Philippines at Daewoo. And because of her this expertise, initially I think Life Global engaged Rochelle as a Asia technical support manager in 2016 to share her experience and expertise to all the embryologists in Asia Pacific region. And currently she is working as a clinical application manager at CooperSurgical's Fertility and Genomic solution, and is providing her clinical and technical support on the larger portfolio of CooperSurgical fertility products. So it's a pleasure today to welcome Rachel. Please join me in welcoming Rachel, who will guide us through this fantastic topic, which will, I suppose, help us further understand the details of cryopreservation. And it's pleasure, Rachel, to have you today on board with us on the platform of Indira Fertility Academy.
Right. Thank you very much for the very kind introductions, Mr. Naval. And also thank you, Dr. Ritesh, for having me. And overall, I would like to say thank you for attending today's event. Now, my topic, as you all were talking about, is regarding principle of cryopreservation. I think a lot of the time we're chasing for new technologies. We would like to achieve, the dream of having 100% survival rates, paying a lot of attentions into, new techniques in terms of cryopreservation. But at the same time, as time goes by, as we are practicing, sometimes we need to remind ourselves, refresh our knowledge regarding the principles of cryopreservation from time to time. It's always very good that we go back to it's important to have a very strong foundations, I must say, before we embark on any new technology. And that is also the basis of my talk today, bring you guys back, all of you. I'm sure some of you are very experienced embryologists, to go back to the basic a little bit, just a bit of a refreshment for tonight. Yeah. Is it okay for me to share my slides at the moment?
Yes, sure,
yeah.
sure.
Okay. Let me. Okay. So let me try.
As you rightly said, obviously the people, when they start working in the lab after 5 to 10 years, there is a bit lag of the understanding, and they forget the principles and just get busy in the routine practice, and bringing them back. Maybe it's a kind of a revision and a revisit to the principles, which will also help them again get back to the practices. So I think definitely that what you mentioned is a very right way to go ahead with. And please, we pass on the virtual mic to you. You can share your screen and start your presentation.
This is my topic, principles of cryopreservation. Now, what I will plan to do for tonight in this topic is, first of all, I'll give a little bit of introductions, background regarding cryopreservation. And also I will move on to discuss a little bit about cryobiology and cryoprotectant agents. I will also discuss regarding methods of cryopreservation, and also touch a little bit regarding safety in cryopreservation before I do a quick summary of the topics for tonight. Okay, so this is a frozen frog, Alaska wood frog. Now, actually, the purpose of cryopreservation, we all want to cryopreserve tissues, especially nowadays, in terms of our IVF practices. But the main purpose is actually to preserve the sample for future use, right? This is what we want. Let's say we have extra embryos, so we want to preserve it so that the patients can come back to use the frozen embryos. Now, when the samples are frozen and stored at minus 196 degrees Celsius, I would say literally all physiological processes are being arrested. This would facilitate almost like indefinite kind of a storage. Of course, this is subject to regulations. Most countries will allow frozen samples to be frozen close to 10 years. And in fact, I believe it's 1 or 2 years ago, UK government were actually planning to increase the cryo storage period for eggs, sperm, and embryos for the current 10 years to 55 years. And the main reason why they want to do that, because they see and view that the current limitations, for 10 years of storage is being severely restricted. So, but cryopreservation, as I mentioned, it's important in IVF. Main reason is because it preserves fertility, which could be due to diseases, donations also, cases, egg donation cases, or it can be due to social reasons as well. By having cryopreservation, is also facilitate the possibility, to have those samples frozen when there's unforeseen kind of events, or even, for out of convenience. A good example would say that, let's say on the day of embryo transfer, we see fluids in the uterine cavity, then the right things to do is not to go ahead with the fresh embryo transfer, but to cryopreserve those embryos. Or sometimes on the day of the egg pickup procedures, the husband needs to go for a very, very super important business trip, Therefore, one of the ways to go about it is to have his semen samples or the sperm samples to be frozen in advance. Then, of course, for PGT cases, the biopsies, embryos, would be frozen so that we can have sufficient time for the biopsy cells to be checked. Not to mention that with cryopreservations, especially if it is a very successful program, it can contribute to cumulative live birth rate. Now, this has actually been shown in the Europe 2011 data, where the contributions of cryopreservations to the cumulative live birth rate is approximately 4%. Therefore, an efficient program is really a necessity, not just to maintain the gametes and embryo viability, but also for achieving a higher success rate for any of the IVF laboratories. Now, we know how important it is. So it's also crucial, like we all discussed from the beginning, the principles, of cryobiology. So here I would like to, dedicate a section to recap on cryobiology and cryoprotectant agents. Now, our aim in cryopreservation is obtain high survival and viability post-towing. There's no point of cryopreserve the samples. It survives, but it may not be viable for a long period of time. It may be only viable for 1 or 2 hours and cannot develop further. Example, say the embryos, it cannot develop further to become expanded blastocyst, which potentially, if we do a transfer, ended up in a pregnancies. Or the oocytes, may survive, but later on in terms of the fertilization rate, embryo development rate is not so optimal, it's not so good, then that is also not to be seen as a very efficient program. So when we are doing cryopreservations, not just to aim for high survival rate, to always look into it, but also high viability. That is very important. Now, during the whole process of cryopreservations, what happened to the sample is actually undergoes first equilibrations with the cryoprotectant agents, so that can induce a proper dehydrations. Okay. Later on, the sample is being loaded on a carrier, being stored, and go through a warming and thawing process for rehydration later on. So that at the end of the day, what we want is the sample can resume the cellular functions. Now, water is a major component of all living cells, and it is essential for cellular metabolism. However, water is one of the high risks that is associated with cryopreservations, because freezing of water will lead to intra and extracellular ice crystal formation, which, that would be the one that poses biggest threat to cell survival. Therefore, at the time when we do cryopreservation, when we do freezing or vitrifications, water needs to be removed, and that is during the equilibration with cryoprotectant agents. Now, if the cooling rate is too slow though, this can cause excessive dehydrations. So again, this is no good. Also, at the time of thawing, if the warming rate is also not high enough, it's not optimal, again, that can cause reformation of ice crystal. Again, this is also not good for the cells. Both, as I mentioned, not just not good, but can actually kill and damage the cells. Now, ice crystal that form during cryopreservation can cause damages to microtubules, meiotic spindles, cytoplasms, the cell organelles, so on and so forth. Therefore, it is super important to minimize the possibility of ice crystal formation. However, we need to understand also at the same time, as much as we want to remove the water from the cells, but the transport of water through the cell membrane when we want to remove it is also being affected by a few factors. One of them is the surface area to volume ratio of the cells, the temperature when we are exposed during the whole process, as well as the osmotic gradient. Now, to achieve an optimal cooling rate is super important. As I mentioned early on, if the rate is too slow, it can actually cause excessive dehydration, which can lead to high internal and external salt concentrations. On the other hand, if the rate is too rapid, where the water has not been transported out from the cells, this will cause an intracellular ice crystal formation, which is again lethal. So it's only with optimal cooling rate, external ice formation will occur, which there's no intracellular freezing. Now, as much as we are paying a lot of attention on the cooling rates and all that, but in cryopreservation, warming rate plays a more dominant role than the cooling rate in modulating the survival rate of the sample. Now, these studies by Seagate and his team has really, pointed out strongly how survival rate is associated with the cooling and warming rate, which we can see over here in the graph. The slower the warming, the lower is the maximum survival rate, regardless of the cooling rate. We can achieve a very high cooling rate, but if our warming rate is not good enough, it's not high enough, our sample will not survive so well. However, if we can achieve a highest warming rate or a very superior fast rate, the survival rate can be very good, irrespective of the cooling rate. And even better, if let's say both are high, which means the cooling rate is high, so is the warming rate. But even if let's say we want to achieve near to 100% survival rate, what we really want to achieve is a big gap between the warming rate as well as the cooling rate. Now, this is one of the reasons why this is important, why we would like to really have a warming rate that is much higher than the cooling rate, is because if the warming rate is not fast enough, what will happen is all these tiny intracellular ice crystal will form. And this is the one that is going to kill our cells. So that is why when we are doing the procedures, when we are aiming for a very high cooling rate, we do it, as fast as possible, loading the samples, putting the samples through the equilibration solutions, putting it into vitrification solutions, and then load it on the carrier with very minimal volume and dip inside the liquid nitrogen. As much as we are achieving a high cooling rate during that period of time, we also have to bear in mind, are we able to achieve a high warming rate at the time of warming, which the warming rate need to be ideally much greater than the cooling rate. Can we achieve that? So this is the factors we always have to look into and always have to bear in mind. Now, let's move our attention also to cryoprotectant agents. There are basically two types of cryoprotectant agents being used when it comes to cryopreservations. One is the intracellular, we also call it permeating cryoprotectant agents, because these are the ones that is going into the cells. Another one is the extracellular or the non-permeating cryoprotectant agents that is remain at the outside of the cells, that doesn't go into the intracellular of the cells. Now, those intracellular cryoprotectant agents commonly used, especially whether it's slow freezing methods or the vitrification method, are DMSO, ethylene glycol, PROH, or glycerol. These are the actually small molecule weights of cryoprotectant agents. Therefore, it can enter the cells and replace the water. And all this will happen, during equilibration time. We can see the cell initially shrink because the water leaving the cells, and later re-expands when we have sufficient number of intracellular cryoprotectants that enter into the cells. Now, I just wish to highlight that, all these cryoprotectant agents, intracellular cryoprotectant agents, are toxic if they are being used incorrectly. Now, there's not saying which one is more superior than the another or which one is less toxic. Okay, so if we are not handling the procedures optimally, we're spending too much time, or the temperature is incorrect, all this will become toxic to the cells. Now, another thing I just want to highlight, the duration of the sample exposing to these intracellular cryoprotectant agents is also very much determined by a few factors. First of all is the plasma membrane permeability to the water, as well as to those intracellular CPA. The type and concentration of the CPA will also play a role. Surface area to volume ratio of the cells, because we know that example said for oocytes, because being a very large cells, it actually have very low surface to volume ratios. Hence, it's not very efficient for the water to be out from the cells, from the oocytes, and for having this intracellular CPA entering the cells. Versus, say, example, blastocyst. Now, blastocyst, by the embryo itself, of course, it is large, but don't forget that it's composed of multiple hundreds or even thousands of those cells, tiny little cells in the trophectoderm or the inner cell mass, right? So, in terms of the surface area to volume ratios, if you look into those cells, definitely is much higher than the oocytes. Another thing would play a role would be the temperature. So if, let's say, our equilibration as well as vitrification solutions, it was not being set at the correct temperature when we are exposing our samples into it, then again, this actually will affect the timing and how much time required for the equilibrations, and again, that will also lead to potentially toxicity, because we could have been exposing the sample inverted comma being prolonged period of time already with that kind of a temperature. Okay, now, just now I mentioned a little bit saying that, the movement of water in and out of the cells, as well as the intracellular CPA, it's actually being determined also by the plasma membrane, because we have to understand the pattern of water as well as intracellular in and out. It can be, stage specific. When they are passing through the lipid bilayer plasma membrane of the cells. Now, if there's one paper which is nicely illustrated these principles, and I actually would urge every one of you to have a good read of that paper, because that really gives us understandings why vitrifications, in terms of the timing can be different, exposure time, the equilibration time can be different for different stage. Mainly is because if we are talking about the early stages of the embryos, we're talking about the oocytes, zygotes, or even the cleavage stage of the embryos. What happened is that it doesn't have all this special channel like aquaporins. So basically, the movement in and out of the cells for those water as well as intracellular is through a simple diffusion method, which is kind of slow. All right. So that is why, apart from being the surface area to volume ratio being large for those oocytes as well as early stage embryos, zygotes per se, but because of this as well, that's why it will need longer time for equilibrations. Whereas if we are talking about those post-compacted embryos, we're talking about morula, we're talking about blastocysts. So it's apart from using this simple diffusion method for the water as well as intracellular to going in and out of the cells, it also by that time have those special channels. We call it channel pathway. It can be called as aquaporins, though there are different names, aquaporin 1, aquaporin 3. So one example is aquaporin 3, which is very much associated when it comes to vitrifications for the water going in and out of the cells. So that is why, when we are talking about for morula and blastocyst stage, it is actually more efficient for the cells, for the water as well as for the CPA to be in and out of the cells. Now, so there is actually a stage specific on that per se, So as I mentioned, all this moving in and out of the cells, not just, being affected by the presence of aquaporins or not, but interestingly, when there's a presence of the water, the intracellular CPF movement can also be hindered sometimes by the presence of the water. Okay, example say in the mammalia oocytes as well as the embryos, glycerol and ethylene glycol can move via simple diffusion for the oocytes, whereas it also can move via aquaporin's 3 channels when it is at the morula and blastocyst stage. Now, this is for glycerol, ethylene glycol, but for DMSO, it's very unique. Because what happened to DMSO is it's not just moved through this simple diffusion as well as the presence of aquaporin 3 at the morula stage, but in fact, they also have other channels with the DMSO can be able to pass through the lipid bilayer of the plasma membrane. So hence, it makes DMSO, I must say that if we discuss about all this, would be a more efficient intracellular cryoprotectant agents as compared to others such as ethylene glycol or PROH. And especially here, PROH, it's documented that actually water can block the movement of this PROH through this aquaporin 3. So in a way, in our equilibration and vitrification solution, it does have water inside. So in a way, it actually sort of like block PROH for going through the using these channel pathways. So it will not be surprising if we are comparing different types of combinations of these vitrification solutions. Those using PROH may have different sort of timings required as versus using those DMSO-based solutions because of the principles behind it of how PROH would work when it's passing through the plasma membrane of the cells. Now, so by having this knowledge of how water and cryoprotectant agent move across plasma membrane, therefore, we can develop different protocols that suits each stage of the cells. Now, the exposure time is really depending on the pathway movement, as I mentioned just now, okay? Example set for oocytes and early stage now, we understand that it's actually do not have aquaporin. So that's why using a stepwise treatment and start off with a lower cryoprotectant agents concentration and slowly top it up would be a better way rather than introducing immediately to the high concentration of cryoprotectant agents. So a gradual introductions would be a great way to go about it. Also at that time, it would be probably better to be introducing these cryoprotectant agents to oocytes and early stage embryos at room temperature. Due to slow movement of those CPA via the simple diffusions. Now, when I say about room temperature is because when we talk about room temperature, sometimes it can be a wide range, Some people will see room temperature 25 to 28 still considered as room temperature. Some will be setting it at, say, 20 to 24 or 25 is still kind of cold, but it's room temperature. So here what they are referring to at room temperature is a slightly elevated. They're talking about maybe 25 to 27 or 28 degrees Celsius. Whereas if we are talking about morula stage of the blastocyst, right? Now, as well as blastocyst. Now, just now we learned that at this post-compacted stage of the embryos, it actually have acquired aquaporin, so which means the movement of the water as well as the CPA in and out of the cells, which is more efficient. So that is why if, let's say, it's no longer that sensitive to the temperature, and those samples actually can be handled at a lower temperature due to the presence of these channel diffusions. So it's kind of interesting. But having said that, if, let's say, you want to really alter your improve your result and look into these marginal gains by checking and altering the temperature of your room in your laboratory. First of all, I strongly advise you to double check with the outcome, all right? Not just simply to change and do it. Use some, what you call that, embryos that is abnormally fertilized, okay? And if you want to do that, just double checking on the survival rate first and see how it goes before you do any changes. All right. Now, And also another very interesting things now, when we talk about vitrification solutions and all that, now most of them are actually binary, which means we're talking about a combination of ethylene glycol with DMSO or ethylene glycol with, say, example, PROH. And the main reason of having two and not just one is to reduce the toxicity of having just one single CPA and using it in high concentrations. Okay, and of course, now that we understand how all this CPA will move in and out of the cells, so in a way, it will actually help to complement each other as well, to having a higher concentrations on replacing the water inside the cells by all these cryoprotectant agents, whether it's ethylene glycol or DMSO or ethylene glycol or PROH. Now, also, interestingly, I just want to bring to your attention because what happened is there's one group in China. What they did is they actually explore of using 3 types of cryoprotectant agents, that is ethylene glycol, using DMSO, as well as PROH, right? And compare the outcome of these modified solutions versus using those binary solutions, which means either just a combination of ethylene glycol with DMSO and as well as or ethylene glycol with PROH. So what happened is, looking into all the other parameters, there's non-significant difference. However, for the oocytes, there is actually a better and higher survival rates using this combination of solutions having 3 cryoprotectant agents. On top of that, those oocytes that thaw, and using all this, if we compare to the embryo quality, post fertilizations, okay, those in the modified having 3 cryoprotectant agents also seems to have a higher quality of embryos, right? So again, having a combination potentially just complement, I would say, all this, how each of the cryoprotectants are characteristic as well as movement in and out of cells, and potentially make it more superior and safe for the samples to be frozen using combinations of different types of CPAs. Now, I spend a lot of time talking about intracellular, but also another thing that's very important is the extracellular CPAs, or we also call it non-permeating CPAs. Now, usually for the non-permeating CPAs, those are the disaccharides, such as sucrose or trehalose. These are very commonly used, okay? The reason why this extracellular CPAs is included in the freezing and thawing solution is it forms actually an osmotic gradient that forces the water to travel along the gradient and out of the cells or into the cells. Okay, it depends. So if, let's say, we're talking about cooling or freezing, so it's, we want to have that gradient to draw the water out. And if, let's say, we are talking during the warming procedures, what we want is a gradual introductions of water back into the cells, for a rehydration process. Now, I must say that there are some comments, or there are some belief that to say one is more superior than the another in terms of the outcome. But if we look into the clinical data, there has yet to have any conclusive clinical data to say which disaccharides is more superior than the another as extracellular CPA. I must say that if you're looking for most of the labs that using, kits with either having sucrose or having trehalose, they are actually getting very good results. I think at the end of the day, what we really want to focus is more like, as a laboratory, as an embryologist, when we are doing the procedures, when we're using the kits, are we using it correctly, to give us the most optimal results? Now, there are actually a few methods of cryopreservations, but I must say I will only focus on the 2 most popular methods, that is the slow freezing and vitrifications. Even though I use the word that's the most popular, but I think you will agree with me, literally there's only one. And I can see that there are close to 200 over people watching this webinar. I suspect some of you the young generations of the embryologists may not even have the experience of using slow freezing methods, because as we all know, vitrification is fully dominated the method of choice of when it comes to cryopreservation now. Now, having said that, I just want to bring this paper to your attentions. This is published a couple of years ago, actually close to 10 years already, where they compare or examine the evidence relevant to compare to comparison of these two cryopreservation methods. So what happened is after they do all this comparison, they concluded that based on the available evidence, all right, so vitrification is the current method of choice. We all agree with that. And especially, this is especially when it comes to cryopreservations of M2 oocytes, all right? For those that have tried slow freezing methods, like myself, when I was practicing, you may notice that when using slow freezing methods in cryopreserving this M2 oocytes, right, it's actually the outcome is really not that stable. In fact, is the survival not so high. So that is also one of the reasons in the old days, oocyte cryopreservation is not very popular as compared to now. Of course, now when everyone is moving into vitrifications, we get a very good success rate with oocyte cryopreservation or oocyte vitrifications. Now, whereas if we look into the early cleavage stage embryos, if we look into the two methods, basically these two methods actually is equally well, given us equally well good results and good success, whether it's slow freezing, whether it's vitrifications. Whereas for the blastocysts, again, what they have observed, what they have concluded, when they look into all these comparison studies is, it seems to be blastocysts. Using vitrifications, you can get a more consistent outcome, okay, as versus the slow freezing methods. So in general rules, what happened is, I think now the conclusion is vitrification is superior for all the stages. But probably you would also agree with me, again, if you have done slow freezing versus vitrification methods before, you will notice that the vitrification actually can be time consuming. If let's say we have to handle a lot of samples to cryopreserved or to vitrify on that particular day, as versus to slow freezing. Slow freezing, as once we have handled it and we put it into the machine, so the machine will do the job for us, and we are embryologists, we would be free to do other procedures. Whereas, for vitrifications, potentially we get locked down in doing just vitrifications throughout for a long period of time. Now, for those that is not familiar with slow freezing, I just quickly recap. Slow freezing is a method that involves dehydration of the cells to the intracellular and extracellular CPAs, introducing it for about 10 minutes period of time. But it is unlike vitrifications. For the slow freezing method, usually PROH, it's more superior to be used and commonly used, especially for oocytes as well as for early stage cleavage stage embryos. Whereas if we are talking about blastocysts, basically, glycerol would be the one. And again, it would be a combinations with sucrose or as extracellular cryoprotectant agents. Now, whereas for vitrification, well, we all know that vitrification is actually involving solidifications of water or water-based solutions without the formation of ice crystals. So instead of, there's a transition to a solid state, the liquid becomes super cool and then enter a glass-like kind of a state. Okay. Now, vitrification was not widely accepted until, I think, close to 15 years ago. Now, one of the reasons is because, due to the concern of high concentrations of cryoprotectant agent that is being used. So the worry about toxicity. Now, if we are comparing the slow freezing solution per se and versus vitrification, yes, you will notice that the concentrations of cryoprotectant agents in the vitrification definitely is 3 or 4 times even higher as compared to those slow freezing media. But if we look into these studies, which is very nicely illustrated, the true mechanism as well as the true facts when we talk about comparing slow freezing and as well as vitrification in terms of toxicities. It has actually highlighted, and they are using mouse zygotes, right? So what they have done is they use mouse zygotes to compare in terms of the intracellular concentration of the CPA, because that is the one that is toxic to the cells. And that is the concern when we talk about toxicity of cryopreservations. So in their studies, they have demonstrated using mouse zygotes that slow frozen zygotes actually have higher intracellular concentrations of CPA versus vitrified zygotes. Not just that, slow frozen zygotes can also tolerate slow and rapid warming. Now, this is one of the reasons why it has high concentrations, due to the high concentrations of the CPA inside those slowly frozen zygotes. Okay, therefore, as much as we think that vitrification solutions is toxic, of course, if we are not handling it correctly, we're exposed to long period of time. But in reality, when the sample is exposed to slow freezing and going through slow freezing media and also going through the whole process versus sample that going through vitrification solution and the method, at the end of the day, the amount of the cryoprotectant agents inside these slow frozen samples is actually much greater as versus to the vitrified samples. And that is also the reasons why, as I mentioned in these studies over here, they highlighted that's why for those vitrified samples, they can only survive if, let's say, the warming rate is high. If the warming rate is not high enough, it will not be surviving so well. Whereas for the slow freezing, even though in terms of the warming rate may not be so high, the sample potentially can still survive very well. Now, with that in mind, also that is why lead to this Parmigiani did a very pilot kind of study to try out using vitrification warming method to warm these slow frozen samples, because in the old days, samples are frozen using slow freezing methods, and now the market or the trend is moving towards vitrifications, and it's very difficult for us to sort of like sometimes find those warming solutions, the rapid warming solutions or rapid thawing solutions for those slowly frozen samples, right? And in our storage room, potentially we still have some samples that is frozen in the old days using slow freezing methods, and now patient come back, right? What are we going to do? Are we going to order thawing solutions, okay, using the slow thawing for the thawing, those frozen in the old days, or are we able actually to use the warming solutions to sort of like thaw those samples? Now, this is the basis of Lodovico Parmigiani's paper published in 2014. So he shared the results where he used this vitrification warming method to thaw those slow frozen oocytes as well as embryos. Now, the results is really magnificent, because what happened is it shows a significant, actually better outcome in survival rate and also the embryo development rate in those rapid warming methods versus those rapid thawing, which means using the vitrification warming method is much better than using those thawing methods using the old methods. Now, this is also one of the reasons, like just like I mentioned to you early on, that facts that slowly frozen embryos or samples actually have higher intracellular cryoprotectant agents inside. That's why it can actually survive still using the raw rapid warming methods. Now, again, this paper by Lodovico Parmigiani is actually very good. I personally find it is actually can be very helpful for us in the laboratory. Like I mentioned just now, we could have samples that is frozen many, many years ago, right? And patient now suddenly come back, would like to conceive again using the frozen embryos, but being frozen into using the slow freezing methods. But are we going to buy a special kits for it, or we can use our vitrification warming solutions to do it? And this paper actually demonstrated it is possible. Okay. Now, again, not just that, because later on, Parmigiani also did a lot of sort of like comparisons of all the different type of commercial kits, whether or not if it is being frozen in this brand of commercial kits, can we be thaw using a different one? The main reasons why he wants to do this is hopefully there's no dependency too much on one particular commercial kits available, because we do not want, as a laboratory, we do not want to be tied down always to just fall into just one type of system, so that we have an alternative. Because I think now we have learned that it's always good to have an alternative system in our laboratory, whether it's culture media, okay, not just one, but you have another culture media system, so that we can always do a check and balance between the two, as well as we will not be dependent only on one. In the event that there's a quality issues, there's actually a supply issues, there's also whatever issues that can be possibly happen, with that particular brand, that we have the experience using the another one. So the same goes with the vitrifications. So that is the principles why he decided to do comparisons. Now, if we look into it, it's actually valid, because what happened is the composition of all the commercial kits are actually very, very similar. Because if we're looking into the equilibration solutions, vitrification solutions, or the warming solutions, dilution solutions, and all this, we are talking about whether it's a DMSO or ethylene glycol, which is majority of it is based on DMSO and ethylene glycol, or some of it is PROH with ethylene glycol. We are talking about 15% and 15% in the equilibration solutions, and for the vitrifications, it's 30% and 30%. And if they have the extracellular cryoprotectant agents, again, we are talking about very similar concentration, 0.5, 0.6, the 0.1 difference molar will not make a huge difference. Whether sucrose or trehalose, I think I highlighted just now that there's actually no clinical studies to show that one is really more superior than the another, or can give a very good results. So warming solution is also the same. We are talking about 1 molar, okay, disaccharides. Then after that, the dilution solutions is half of it, 0.5 molar sucrose. And all this give actually very good results. So really, if we look into it and understand about it, it just actually highlight to us that this should be able to be used interchangeably. Now, of course, Lodovico Parmigiani, he is very bold. He would be tried to willing and daring to do it, okay, by that understandings. So he did a very good studies and published in a couple of years ago in 2018, where he, which is a prospective randomized control trial, having 4 groups of patients, whether they are frozen using kitazato and kitazato, or later on, or another group is sage and sage. But what happened is, in terms of the warming, they can be changed to frozen in kitazato, thaw in sage, or sage and then thaw in kitazato. What happened is, you can see over here in terms of the survival rates of those embryos is actually almost the same. It's non-significant difference. And in terms of the implantation rate as well, it is not significant, right? Some will be questioning, saying that the number of studies, the number of sample is small. Yes, it is small, but it is actually a good start to let us understand that it is, by understanding the principles, by understanding everything. And here it would be a good study to start off, to let us understand that it actually, all this can be used interchangeably. Now, of course, another one, he even do it on terms of a bigger studies in that particular second sections, which using embryos for patients' own oocytes, as well as the using from the egg donors. Again, there's no significant difference when we are talking about whether it's frozen using kitazato and thaw in another stage. So vice versa. So it's just to highlight that there's no difference in clinical outcome between, all these popular kits, despite there could be a minor differences in terms of the buffer system, whether it's MOPS or HIPPIS, or we are talking about the protein source, whether it's HSA or HPC, or we are talking about the extracellular CPA, right? Just like I mentioned, whether it's we're talking about sucrose or trehalose, or all this actually does not give us a difference in terms of the outcome. So as an embryologist, as a laboratory, this gives us actually a free hand to just not relying on one particular system in our laboratory. Always, if there is an opportunity for us, and now there's paper to show that it is, can be used interchangeably with good results, good outcome, it's something to consider, actually, to have another alternative when it comes to vitrifications. Okay, now move to another sections. Is cryopreservation safe? All right, just would like to quickly tickle your mind a little bit. Okay, well, studies, actually, there are few studies and talking about it. Okay, but when we are talking about cryopreservation, there are several key areas of concerns. Okay, which is, first of all, safety of the gametes, the embryos during handling and processing, maintaining the competency to generate healthy pregnancy. That is important. So it's not just in terms of survival, embryo development, but whether or not it can generate a healthy pregnancies. Okay, and again, that is not enough. Whether it can generate healthy birth and neonatal outcomes, right? What about the long-term effects of the babies, right? So again, all this will play a role. And finally, of course, the risk of microbial contaminations. I said, well, I always like to say touch wood until today, not that I'm aware of, hopefully that's not happening. At least we have not heard of any cross-contaminations of microbial contaminations inside the liquid nitrogen tank as of now, But again, doesn't mean that, it is safe. So during the whole practices, we still need to be aseptic as much as possible. Now, answering just now these questions, as vitrification is the dominant cryo methods now. So I would like to share this paper that have reviewed approximately 40 studies related to safety and efficiency of oocyte vitrifications. Now, what happened in here, the author actually concluded that by autologous oocytes, the obstetrics and neonatal outcomes appear to be promising and comparable to pregnancies obtained with fresh oocytes. Now, in another larger cohort studies involving more than, I think, 2,000 babies in each fresh ET and FET group, again, the results show no increased incidence of congenital abnormalities after vitrifications. Again, this one was published in 2018. Well, another a little bit more reassuring kind of papers to show us. Now, but however, another thing is, it's quite interesting because so far, I must say that all the outcomes for most of the studies have reassured us the safety of cryopreservation on the human oocytes or human embryos. But for this, it's quite interesting because in this retrospective study on close to 25,000 freeze-old patients, right, over the period of 6 years, 2011 to 2017, what they have observed is there's no effect found on the survival rates and neonatal outcomes. But if you look carefully, interestingly, it seems to be the prolonged storage time or is associated with negative pregnancy outcome. So you can see that from here, the group 1 is, which is less than 3 months, 3 months of the storage, or 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 24 months. So the longer the sample is being stored, apparently in terms of the pregnancy rates would drop. Okay, well, there could be multiple factors. One of the factors is if, let's say, we are having the sample that is being frozen in the MVE tank per se example, that is mostly being stored. When we take the sample out, a lot of the time, other samples will be also exposed in a short period of time of fluctuations of the temperature. So we do not know whether all this would actually have a little bit of an impact in terms of the outcome eventually. But of course, the author also concluded there's potential kind of during the prolonged period of storage, there could be some sort of free radicals and toxic effect that can cause an increase in the DNA fragmentations. There's no conclusion what is the real reason behind it, but I think this would be something for us to look into. We can look into our own personal data in our laboratory if there are any similarities to it, because I think this data would be one of the source. It's crucial for us to discuss with our patients if they have samples frozen, and so encourage them when they would want to use it. If they are not getting pregnant, or if they do get pregnant, when it'd be nice for them to come back and utilize or make a decisions what to do with their frozen samples. Okay, so a quick summary of what I've discussed. Well, I touched about cryopreservation. It's an essential part of a comprehensive ART services, which can boost cumulative pregnancy rates in a very, a very good or efficient program. The movement of water in intracellular CPA through lipid bilayer of plasma membrane is actually stage specific. So a modifications in protocol and samples handling it's very likely needed. Now, all intracellular CPAs are toxic if being used incorrectly. Vitrification is now the preferred method for all stages of the samples. Commercial kits are very similar. That would lead us the use of the kit interchangeably. Cryopreservation appears to be largely safe, though some data do suggest that prolonged storage time is associated with negative pregnancy outcome. Okay, so here are some bibliography that I use for this presentations, and I thank you for your attentions. And I will be happy to take on any questions that anyone may have.
So, Rachel, first of all, I think no words are enough to thank you for such a wonderful and such a nice, comprehensive session on cryopreservation. So I think you have covered all the aspects of cryopreservation, right from cryopreservation of an oocyte to cryopreservation of cleavage stage embryo to cryopreserving a blastocyst. I think most of the topics you have covered, and yes, Naval, anything you want to add?
No
So I think, yes, it was beautifully covered, because not only it was sperm, oocyte, and embryo, but also the composition of the media, the different kit and the comparison and the success rate between them, the safety, and all those things were also covered. So I think there were a lot of basics which have been covered, and also the questions have been answered in the presentation itself. But yes, the chat box is open, and the question and answer session is also open. So guys, audience, if you have any questions, please, you can put it into the chat box, and we can start taking them one by one.
And by the time we start getting the questions, Rachel, just a small point. In your initial slides, you mentioned very well about the surface area and the CPA, the relation between the surface area and the CPA. So can you elaborate a bit about how important is it in what is the importance, significance of surface area in case of an oocyte, especially when we know that the spindle is very delicate, it's very sensitive, and what are the steps to optimize our cryo survivor in case of an oocyte?
Right. So I mean, when it comes to oocytes, we all know that it's a very large cells. Therefore, in terms of this surface area to volume ratio, it's actually very low. So what happened is for the water, really all the water in within the oocytes to be out of the cells, it would take a much longer time. And if let's say we are not allowing sufficient time for the oocytes to be equilibrated in the equilibration solutions, now what will happen is some of the remaining water within the oocytes, if we put it going through the cooling process, this where these ice crystal formations will happen. So that is why during this whole period of time when we are doing the oocyte vitrifications, the key, and which I always believe, having the gradual introductions, first of all, slowly introduced, because like you rightly said, spindle is very important for the oocytes. Again, we don't want to have the very, osmotic shock, just dumping it into a high concentrations at normal equilibration solutions, 15% and 15%. But why not we introduce slowly? And I think now that is the method of choice now when it comes to oocyte vitrification. Slowly introductions of the cryopreservation agent and slowly increase the concentrations. That's number one. The number two is, of course, we need to make sure that the cell would shrink, okay, and regain the original size. And again, this is one of the key factors. We will see whether the sample is well equilibrated or not. Now, a lot of the time, those samples that do not so-called re-expand close to 90% or fully when it's close to 15 minutes of the equilibrations, that actually, I would say, is an indicator potentially the sample is not of a very good quality. Right. Now, I always get the questions going through these workshops. People would just ask, it's glowing, it's coming back, but it's getting very slow, right? So now it's almost there. It's 75%. It's almost 90%. It's normal, almost there, but it's close to 50 minutes. What should I do? Maybe I'll wait until 60 minutes. That would be good enough. They will be back to normal. Should we do that? My recommendation is don't go beyond that. It's just an indicator that potentially this oocyte quality is really not up to the par. So I would recommendations 15 minutes. 15 minutes it is. That would be the max you go. If it does not recover fully as what we want it to be, put down in the case note, right, to mention that, okay, today I'm doing freezing for this particular patient, and in this particular carrier, we have oocytes that does not recover fully. Okay, so that at the time when we do the warming later on, we can sort of have some sort of expectation. Potentially, it will not survive so well. Or maybe it will survive, but later on, in terms of the fertilization rate or embryo quality, is not that good. And again, going back to the traceability, so that we can have, when we want to do this so-called KPI or even root cause analysis, if, the outcome is not so favorable, what would that be? And we can trace one of the factors as one of it. And maybe we have to discuss further with our clinicians. It may have something to do with the protocols, maybe something to do with the patient profile, infertility factors, so on and so forth.
Okay. So going further, we have a lot of questions in our question and answer box. I think I'll start taking up the questions a bit quickly. So open versus closed vitrification system, which is better?
I won't say which is better, to be honest. The reason of having a closed system is because people worry about contaminations. That is the closed systems. That's why it is, right? As I mentioned, touch wood, we have not heard of any contamination as of now, right, at the moment. But one thing really have to bear in mind is when we talk about having a closed system, in terms of the cooling rate would be not as high as the open system. That's number one. And in terms of during the warming, the speed will not be so fast because of extra steps. So you just have to bear in mind. So whether you're moving from an open system to closed system, or you want to go with the closed system going to open system, the key is there is a phase of going through this optimizations and learning curve. So I would highly recommend, for whatsoever reasons you choose to opt for, let's say, open system or closed system, going through that learning process first, okay, before moving. Yeah, that would be my comment.
Yeah. So both you mean to say both have their own pros and cons, but with the closed system, they definitely I think it is more apt for viral infected cases, especially for virally infected cases. You can go for a closed system. I think that
Yes.
is a more viable option.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah.
people are asking just it is out of this box. People are asking for the recording. Definitely, you will get the recording of this webinar. We'll upload it soon on the YouTube or on our YouTube channel, and there you can just log in. I'll share the details of the link later in the groups as well. Naval, you can take the next question.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, one of the questions is, what is the key differences in the cryopreservation protocols and consideration that needs to be kept in mind for early day three versus blastocyst? And how does this difference impact the success of freezing and thawing process?
I'm trying to read that again because it's a long questions. What are the key
Yeah.
differences in cryopreservation protocols and considerations that need to be kept in mind when freezing early day three embryo versus blastocyst? Okay, let's do that first. What are the key differences in cryopreservation protocols? Now, if we look into the cryopreservation, I suspect you are referring to the vitrifications. If you are, that is because that is the key. So if you're looking really of the key differences in the protocols, there's no major differences if you look into it. So a lot of the time we are talking about when it oocytes, we put it inside the equilibration solutions. The timing is really depending on the stage of the sample. So if we're talking about the oocytes, because of the large cells, we're talking about maybe 12 to 15 minutes. But if you're talking about day three embryos and blastocysts, day three embryos, because of the cells itself, the blastomere smaller size, and literally we need less time. We are talking about maybe 5 minutes or 7 minutes that would do. The key is expanded well. Now, if we are talking about blastocysts, now again, we have to consider whether we are talking about expanded blastocysts or it is a collapsed blastocyst, right? So expanded blastocyst, because of the blastocytic fluid has a lot of water inside, then for sure the time would be much longer that is required. That is again would be close to 15 minutes. But if let's say we're talking about a collapsed blastocyst, again the timing would be around 5 to 8 minutes that would do, right? So the consideration is the key would be for the cells to shrink. That is a sign the water is going out, and then regain the size close to at least 90% of the original size if that's possible. Then that would be the key factors we have to look into, whether we are talking about day three embryos or the blastocysts. All right, I think that would be the important. In terms of the thawing wise, the key again would be on the first solution, 1 molar sucrose. Really have to do it fast so that we can achieve a very high warming rate. When I say fast, it's meaning moving the sample from the liquid nitrogens, right, and dip inside the first solutions, the 1 molar sucrose solutions, as short period of time as possible, and making sure the 1 molar sucrose solution is at the correct 37 degrees Celsius. Again, that is the key. All right. So making sure everything is well prepared before we start our warming procedures. That is important.
I think that has answered. I think few more questions also on the similar lines, which are there in the chat box. So with regards to the expansion and shrinkage, how much time should be kept? Let it be oocyte, let it be early embryo, let it be blastocyst. It's like if they have shrunken and expanded again, at least 90% expansion, go ahead. And if it is not expanded completely, but you have hit that 15 minutes time, please do not wait and go ahead and do the freezing, because that may indicate that it may not be a very good sample, which possibly may affect the success rate. I think that's the summation of with regards to the time in the freezing, right?
Yes, correct.
Great. Okay. So one of the question, because we also got the question was there about the success rate also, and on the similar lines, the next question which is there in between is, could you please explain on how to troubleshoot fluctuating FET success rate over the time And what could be the possible reasons for these fluctuations if the operator is same, the protocol is same, and generally it's the same category of patients you cater to. Still, if you have a fluctuating FET success, then what would be the possible reasons for the fluctuations? And can the cryopreservation protocol have to do anything with regards to these fluctuations in the success rate?
Right. First of all, I would like to ask is how do we define the FET success rate? Are we looking into the survival rate as a success rate, or are we looking at the embryo development, or we are looking for the pregnancies or implantations? I think this is a questions that the audience would have to ask, right? First of all, that questions. If let's say we are looking for something to do with the pregnancy rates, then
Right, I believe it's the same.
If we are talking about pregnancy rates, again, not just looking our own protocols, at the same time, we also may have to look into taking into consideration on the clinical sides, the patients, the preparation of the patients, the embryo transfer technique itself, and also all this would potentially affect, right? That is one of it. Now, so when we are talking about FET success rate, again, this is related to KPI. I would highly recommend always have a specific group of patients. Okay. Now, what I'm saying, a golden group of patients, okay, as a reference. So, which means patients, a good prognosis patients, and these are the patients you define the KPI in your FET cycle, FET procedures. So, example, with this group of patients, young patients, embryo quality, it's always good at the time of freezings. Don't change your protocol whatsoever. And what is your success rate, your pregnancy rate of this group? You would be expecting, very high success rate, pregnancy rate, let's say example, 60%. So with this range of patients, you should be always getting very good results. Now, always refer your laboratory success rate, looking into it when you're talking about fluctuations. Is it fluctuations within this group? If it is fluctuation within this group, then something to look into it, First of all, of course, laboratory side. Are we really, equilibrating the warming solution well? Our procedures, are we really any drifting from the protocol, from SOP? That one, all this have to look into it. Okay. And then, of course, we can also consider looking into whether or not batch to batch differences in terms of the kit, of the media. Okay. Because again, it also not just involved on the vitrification solutions kit, but also have to look into the culture media, all right? Whether or not during that period of your culturing, there's any fluctuation, anything's happened, all this. Then at the same time, looking into the clinical side, any changes. So when we want to do a troubleshooting and all this, okay? So first of all, I always like to say, define a reference group as a start and look into it, the reference group, whether or not there's any fluctuations, okay? Or there's always another group that is not within this, but that fluctuates. You can have different group of patients with different type of a KPI. That would actually help us to define whether or not we are having problem, okay? Or it's just potentially one-off kind of a scenario, or is it during this period of time, we are just happen to have a lot of patients previously frozen, difficult patients, older patients, now they are coming back for FET. So you see the fluctuations in terms of the results. In terms of the protocol wise, if we are not drifting from the protocol, it's unlikely it's the protocol issues, okay? Because I'm following everything, no changes, it should give us the consistent results. Yeah.
Okay, great. So basically, with regards to the different age domain or different age domain, as you were mentioning, there should be kind of a gold standard patient where we know we can refer to, and this is the success rate which will generally we get in that group. And if there are different groups, then we need to know the success rates of all the different groups and accordingly compare so that we can understand if there is a drift or not. And within that, if we are actually shifting up and down, then we need to look after the clinical cause, batch to batch variation, patient variation, and then try to troubleshoot, are we drifting from the success or it's something which is not in our control and beyond our control from the laboratory conditions, right?
Yeah. Now, yeah, you just nailed it.
Great. Thank you. When you also mentioned in this particular time on the equilibration media front, and that is also one of the questions I think
Mm-hmm.
Jayaram has asked in the box, that the
Mm-hmm.
optimal time for equilibration of ES and VS, Kitasato SOP
Mm.
prefers 1 hour, some of the other companies prefer 30 minutes. So with regards to vitrification and also the warming solution, what is the equilibration duration for the medias? What is your take on it?
Right. I believe what his question meaning of the equilibration is we meaning before we start using it, right? Whether it's equilibrated to the room
Yes.
temperature, that is the equilibration times required.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
it is actually a very good question, because from the company point of view, 1 hour is for sure. Even if they are taking one vial, let's say example, one vial of the solutions, 2 ml, 4 ml, example, you put it at the room temperature for 1 hour, by then it will be at room temperature. That is for sure, right? Now, whether it's 1 hour, whether it's 30 minutes, or maybe potentially only 10 minutes required, we don't know. My recommendation always is, if we have this quality controlled device, let's say we have the thermometer, that is the key, digital thermometer with probe. What we can actually use is, as part of the laboratory QC, okay, really, which is one of the key, we can so-called take one vial of the solutions. Literally, we may need to sacrifice that vial and use it to measure. Okay, put the thermometer probe inside and measure how long will it take for it to reach. Let's say we take it out from room 2 to 8 degree in the fridge. How long will it take when it become room temperature of our room? Okay, that actually, this kind of information would be very useful at our fingertips. Okay, so example sake, we would just need to have, today I only need 1 ml. So maybe I will aliquot 1 ml, take 1 ml of the solutions, ES or VS solutions, and put it inside the test tube, right? Do another all this QC, just double checking how much time is required. You'll be surprised, maybe it's only 20 minutes required. I just give an example. This is an example. I don't really do it at 20 minutes. You verify it, validate it in your laboratory. Maybe just 20 minutes is required. Then all this information, it will be at your fingertip, really. The same goes with, I always like to say, this is out of the topic about vitrification, just a media. How much time is required for the media for you to equilibrate and reach the correct temperature and the pH level with oil and without oil? If let's say you have those thermometer probe, you do your own measurements, put it inside the CO2 incubator, the information will really be very helpful for you, because at time of emergency, then you immediately know, I just bring it out, I need, say, 30 minutes, my media will be safe to use. So for this, yes, the Kitasato will tell you maybe 1 hour, okay? Others will tell you maybe 30 minutes. If you do it at 1 hour, you will be safe. If you do it at 30 minutes, if another brand, you would definitely be safe, So, but the idea is if you can do your own validation, it's even better.
Right. So you have very well explained that it should be a minimum 1 hour. That is the most of the company protocols, they say that 1 hour of equilibration is really what is needed. But yes, it also depends on the volume of the media that is to be equilibrated, and which procedure you are going for, and to validate it with the temperature gauge. That would be a better idea. I observed during one of my audits, at times what happens in case the embryologist doesn't have enough of time, what they tend to do is they will place it at 37 degrees to bring it at room temperature quickly. So I would really want you to comment on this, and to give us a message that not to follow this practice, and what harm they are, what detrimental effects that media has once they are bringing it at 37 degrees.
It's a very interesting. Okay. Can we do it? Can we not do it? There's no validation to say that, because the challenging part over here is there's no check what will happen to the solutions if it is being brought to 37 degree. And we are talking about containing DMS or the intracellular cryoprotectants inside, right? It's not just the base solutions. So will it have any impact? My thoughts, I cannot, there's no validations, to be honest with you. My thoughts would be probably no, but we do not know, to be honest, you know. So anything that is unsure, for me, I will recommend not to do it. Because I think there would be, not to do it, because we really do not know, to be honest. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't know the exact effects and what effect the media will have on the survival of the embryo or the oocyte, whatever you are cryofreezing or thawing.
Exactly. Especially if this is on the ES and VS solutions, and samples could be frozen for a long period of time, and we do not know when it gets thawed, and we don't know the outcome. And whether or not the embryologists will write it down, how they actually use the solutions. Did they do it before like this for this case? That's why, you know, later on link to the outcome. If there is, then maybe we can have some idea. Or maybe you say, oh, see, the result, there's no impact. So yes, we can do it. Or the result actually sometimes turn out to be poor and we don't know. Now we are scratching our head. Why it doesn't survive so well? Yeah.
So the clear message is, by the time we don't know the effects, not to do it, not to perform it.
Anything that we do not know,
from
not to do.
Any such activities. Yes.
Yeah, anything we do not know, not to do.
Interesting question next. So it is regarding freezing the poor grade embryos along with the good grade embryos. So we want. So there is how to decide how to work on freezing two embryos. One is a poor grade embryo, one is a good grade embryo, and which embryo to. Obviously, we will be looking at the good grade embryo. So the shrinkage as well as the re-expansion of a good grade embryo. How to handle such situation?
Yeah, embryologist is amazing, right? Do all sorts of. Then we have all these headaches going on. Now what to do, right? Yeah, you have a good grade and you have a poor grade. The good grade seems to recover faster, but the poor grade it is not. I mean, the poorer grade seems to recover faster, right? It seems to be, but the poor one. Okay, let's put it this way. If it is within 15 minutes, if let's say we are talking about equilibrations, okay, let's say example, if you already reached the time, okay, it doesn't matter, right? If let's say we are talking examples here, just for conversation, because I don't know this one we are referring to what. If let's say we're talking about blastocysts, expanded blastocysts, right? So the good blastocysts seems to be taking slightly slower, whereas the poorer blastocyst seems to be at 12 minutes, is already kind of fully re-expanded, example. Yeah. So you can wait for the until 15 minutes for the another blastocyst. Okay, that doesn't matter, right? But as long as we don't go beyond the recommended time, I think that would be the key. All right. So that would be my answer to it. But of course, if we
sorry, I had something to add on to it. Maybe my suggestion would be why you want to mix two different grade of embryos in one straw. So isn't it?
I was about to say that.
Yeah, exactly. Why you want to mix those? Because anyways, nowadays we avoid transferring bad grade embryos along with the good grade embryos. So either it should be only good grade embryos that are transferred, or it should be the bad grade embryos altogether. Not to mix two different grades.
Yeah, that was actually my next thoughts about it, you know, to say, then don't mix them together, the good and the bad together, or you sort of. But I can sometimes understand, being an embryologist previously myself, you know, a really clinical practice embryologist, you have very good embryos, very sure, okay? You have one, it's a bit poor, not that bad, okay? Not as good as the one. And if you want to freeze it separately, sometimes you would be thinking the cost would be probably high because two carriers versus one, you know. So that is also one of the potential consideration. Why not I just put them together? So if the poor one doesn't survive so well, the good one will survive. That kind of thinking process going on in the head. So potentially that's what ended up. But of course, in ideal situations, if possible, then just separate it. It's very clear cut. To be honest, when you talk about cost inside the laboratory, it's not. It may seem, if you look into one item and one item, it seems to be huge. But as per package per se, it's only not that much. And for patients, they would really prefer us to really pay attention in all this, doing one by one clearly, rather than having doubts, rather than a minute in terms of the cost. To be honest, yeah.
Okay.
Great. It's obviously embryology is so interesting, and every person and clinicians or the circumstances may give across a different solution. So at times putting two different can be a solution, at times putting two together can be a solution. So it has to be at times patient specific, circumstances specific, and you need to take a wise decision in those particular situations or circumstances is what we believe. But as you also rightly said in the previous question, go by the statistics, have the things documented, mention them so that you can correlate it. Just don't go on your feelings or emotions, because that is when it starts becoming dangerous. So if you have things documented, then it's good. You can refer the previous experience and then go accordingly. Just the I think so should not come into the picture.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So one of the questions which I like to put across, because there are 2 to 3 questions on the same line. One is on what will a laser hatching do and the effects. I mean, the freezing you need to look into, and there is a biopsied embryo and the hatching blastocyst. So there are 2, 3
Right.
different types. So what precautions you need to take when you're freezing a hatched or a biopsied embryo? And how will that affect the cancellation rate of embryo because of laser or biopsy and freezing thawing effect on the same?
Right. I think for hatch blastocysts, those really zona free, sometimes a little bit tricky. It becomes kind of sticky, right, to the carrier. That is one of it. And of course, during the handling, because it's already nude, it's without any zona pellucida. So during the whole process of where we are passing it, the blastocyst through the equilibration, vitrification, and loading, just handle it with care. When I say handle it care, it's if we are using the pool pipette, make sure that the opening of the pipettes, the pool pipette is not too small where, it's squeezing through the samples. That's number one. And then ideally, I would highly recommend don't use pool pipette anymore. Just use those commercially available pipettes. It's safer because it is not sharp at the opening. And of course, in terms of the size, we can use slightly larger size diameter, inner diameter of those pipette, so that we will not be squeezing the sample through. That's number one. The number two is especially for hatch blastocysts. I think biopsy blastocysts would be the same process as well. It would be when we are loading it onto the carrier to leave a little bit of the vitrification solutions behind. I'm not saying it's a large volume, right? But it's just a little bit nice enough that to cover the whole hatch blastocyst, so that it will not become very sticky, especially at the time of warming. Because again, what we do not want is when we want to warm it and we place this carrier into the first warming solution, 37 degrees Celsius, it gets sticky and stuck onto the carrier. And regardless how we try to shake it and so on, it doesn't take off, get off from the carrier. And we have to use the pipettes to blow it. And that could be sort of like dangerous to the sample per se. So my recommendations is, leave a little bit of those behind, of the solutions behind. That would be very helpful. Handle it with care. Then a lot of the time when it comes to the biopsies, blastocysts, the question is whether, to freeze it when it's collapsed, or we freeze it when it is, wait for it to re-expand. I think the key would be, first of all, make sure that the biopsy cell has been successfully tubed. I think that is the key before we vitrify those biopsies, blastocysts. Because what we do not want is, okay, I have biopsies. Okay, quickly somebody take the sample, the blastocyst, and vitrify it, then oops, when I want to do the tubing, I've lost the sample. That would be a little bit disastrous. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to throw it and re-vitrify it? That kind of a situations, right? So my take would be, first of all, ensuring that the biopsy cells have been tubed successfully, then do the vitrifications. Now, in terms of vitrifications, there's two schools of thoughts. Some would say, okay, collapse is better. Some says expanded is better. But if we look into all those studies, we can draw literally one conclusion. A lot of the time, it depends on how confident are you in handling those blastocysts. If example said you are those that is the laboratory is very confident in handling expanded blastocysts and has been getting very good results. Now you do biopsies of the blastocyst is collapsed. You may not have the experience of handling the collapsed blastocysts, right? So that would be the challenge. So one way to go about it, you can wait for it to re-expand and you do the what you call that vitrification as per the normal blastocysts. But of course, those that have very experience using collapsed blastocysts to vitrify, then once you have tube, when it's still collapsed, you go ahead and proceed with your vitrifications that can go about it. Yeah.
Okay. And so I think most of the questions they have been answered, and I can see only one question last. Is ice nucleation practiced in IVF generally? What will be the consequences or significance of using that procedure?
I am actually not don't quite understand when you talk about ice nucleation.
Practiced in IVF, no ice. Naval, can you understand what? Okay. Actually, the question is not very clear, and we can just skip this one.
Okay.
So I think we are through with all the questions. While freezing poor grade together equation.
I think ice nucleation, I also didn't actually connect it. Is it something with regards to seeding in the slow freezing, or I'm not sure.
No, it's not regarding slow freezing, Naval. Ice nucleation, it's not. It's a bit unclear question. We just skipped one question with regards to extracellular CPA, such as sucrose and trehalose, which is more suitable for oocytes.
Right. There is actually one paper that's to have showed. Oh no, sorry. That paper actually have showed the trehalose in the H blastocyst. But if you're talking about the oocytes and you're talking about the embryos, normal embryos and all that, it actually do not really see a difference whether a sucrose or trehalose, which one is more superior. But in that particular paper, what they have shown is using trehalose for the H blastocyst seems to give a little bit more superiority as versus the sucrose. Yeah, but okay, on oocytes, yeah.
Okay. So maybe with this, I think there are no more questions.
Right. So I think we had definitely had a beautiful session. There were some scientific questions also, but we tried to obviously took more of a practical question so that the practicing embryologist will definitely get the help out of it. And I think Rachel answered all of them very clearly and gave a clear tips to everyone on stick to SOP, do not go beyond the timeline, stay with 1 hour of equilibration for the media. If in case the success is getting fluctuated, have the standards, and with regards to those standards, try to compare them so that you can do the troubleshooting in a bit effective manner. And I think all of them with the clarity on the principles of cryopreservation has really made this session a wonderful session. Thanks, Rachel, for giving your time, making yourself available for the Indira Fertility Academy, because we have obviously have this agenda that the education is for everyone, and that's the reason this every month webinars, the sessions, online sessions are open to everyone, all the embryologists, and not only to the in the IVF embryologists, so that everyone gets benefited from the education which we are trying to spread across amongst the embryologists. So thank you for making yourself available and for the beautiful session and answering all the questions clearly to everyone.
It's
Yeah.
my pleasure. It's really a good fun, learning.
Yeah.
To me, it's actually it's a good interactions because can understand what are the concerns, what are the questions everyone is having. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Rachel, so much.
You're most
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's wait for another third Friday of the next month to have another session, which we'll bring across to all of you and with another wonderful speaker. So we'll let you all know very soon. Till then, have a nice day and have a wonderful time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.